Hi guys, it's Tamara. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Welcome back. Today is Friday and we're going to be talking about some of the things that you guys have asked me. We're also going to be talking about some of the statements that you guys have made, and I'm going to go ahead and pick and pull apart a few of them and discuss them and answer the questions and point out some really good comments that you guys have made. And on Monday, we're going to start a brand new topic. So thank you so much for being with me today in this video. For those who are subscribed and for those who are new to the channel, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button so that you can stick around with us and, get to know us and be a part of our validating community. There are a lot of people that are benefiting from the YouTube channel, and I love to see it grow every single day. And I love getting your emails. I love talking with you guys. I think it's awesome that there's a medium like YouTube that affords us the opportunity to connect from all over the world. I just think it's so cool, and I'm grateful that we get a chance to do that. So I welcome you to subscribe. The benefits for you in today's video is that I'm going to point out a couple of comments that you guys have made, and I'm going to talk about them and answer some of the questions. And then at the end, I'm going to point out some really good ones that really touched my heart. So let's just go ahead and jump in. So I have my handy list here, front and back, and I'm going to post the comments all around me as I talk about the different comments that you guys have made. Okay, so then that way you can listen to me and then you can also see the comments as well. So I'm going to start with Jian Jian. I love her, I love the comment here. The comment says, this year, this channel, along with a few other podcasts, really helped me so much. But also, thank you for reaffirming and summing this up. And we were actually talking about psychopathic fathers, I believe it was, or maybe another video. I have to go back and take a look at the video that this person is referring to. But you're welcome, Jian Jian. I'm really glad that you feel reaffirmed and you feel like, you're really being heard. And that with other podcasts, this channel has been useful to you. One of the things I love about this channel, and this is for those of you who are new subscribers or considering subscribing, is that, the subscribers end up communicating with each other and supporting each other and really trying to help each other out, and they offer suggestions to each other, which I think is so cool because they're not just communicating with me, they're communicating with each other. And what I'm starting to see, the more that we do live conversations or we do videos like this, what I'm starting to see is different ones actually comment in response to other ones, because what's happening is familiarity. They're becoming more familiar with each other the more that we do these kind of videos and live discussions. So one of the benefits of this channel is that it's not just communicating with me, it's communicating with each other. So that is awesome. So Jian Jian, I'm really glad that you feel like that. The next is Nikki. And, I did a video that talked about how to manage the impact of psychopathic fathers. And what she said was, wouldn't it be more ideal to basically talk about this with a therapist? And I'm going to post the video right up here so you can go ahead and check that video out. But yes and no. I think I answered it in the comment section on that video as well. But yes and no to that question, Nikki, because I think a therapist can help you clinically process it. They can also help you, turn it and flip it and look at it in different ways. But I also think it's something that you can do on your own. You have to come to a place of healing. Self-forgiveness, self-compassion, and then forgiveness of the psychopathic father before you can begin to use the tools that I mentioned in that video. I think you can do it all by yourself. You can also do it with a spiritual leader or a pastor, somebody who really gets you. So, yes, you can use a therapist, but then you can also do it by yourself as well. I think you have to be at a certain place in growth before you can actually do that on your own. So I think that's a really good question. Thank you for that. I'm going to point out a comment from Gia. I hope I'm saying her name right. And I'm going to post that comment right over here for you. She says, I believe my birth father is a narcissist and my stepfather was a psychopath. And then she commented later and said, this taught me who to avoid. That's 100% correct. And I'm glad that you brought that up, Gia, because these kind of unstable people do teach us how to avoid other people like them. It wasn't my experience as a clinician that helped create my understanding of human behavior. It was the people closest to me and the people who taught me to get away from them that taught me what I know. Okay, it was the people that were closest to me and the people that I had brought into my close realm that taught me who to avoid and taught me about human behavior. So I think this is an awesome comment. There's another side to this comment that I want to point out. And, that's the connection between genes and environment. So, your birth father was a narcissist. That's a personality disorder. So it's mainly genetic. The other part of that is environmental. So he learned certain behaviors over time that made him that way. And then your stepfather was a psychopath. And what that tells me is that perhaps, your mom had a really hard time choosing healthy people to be a part of and healthy people to be a part of your life. And so she chose one guy who was a narcissist and went and chose another individual who was very similar. There's a pattern there. And for a lot of us, we choose the same people. Although we think we're going at a relationship in a different mindset, we're not. We're still reaching for and trying to grab hold of people who are very much like, the people that we're trying to get away from. It's just how it seems to go. That's basically just the process. All right, so that was a great question. Okay, and so the next is going to be Bree N. I'm going to put her comment over here for you. She spoke a little bit about forgiveness. She spoke about the video that I can post up here for you, where I talked about forgiveness and the process of forgiveness and what that would look like. And so she says, can you talk about looking at things from the other person's perspective? Basically, if we excuse the behavior, or if we're kind of looking as if we're excusing the behavior by forgiving, how do you look at that from the other perspective? And I think I'm understanding the question, Bree. If not, please do put a comment in the comment section below correcting me. Let me know if I got your question correct. But it sounds to me, and I've read it a few times to make sure it would click, it sounds to me as if you're asking, how does the other person perceive your forgiveness of them? Are they seeing it as excusing their behavior? And I really do think that this is situational. It's on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on the person's personality and their ability to be accountable and things like that. So let's say somebody does something harsh to you. So we've talked about psychopathic fathers this week. Let's say your psychopathic father does something to you that harms you, destabilizes you, makes you feel overwhelmed, makes you feel unloved and uncared for. And you decide to forgive him, which means, you've decided to call him on the phone and wish him a happy holiday, right? You've decided to invite him to Christmas dinner or your New Year's party that's coming up in another, month. All right, so let's say you've done that. Well, how will the psychopathic father perceive your forgiveness? Well, psychopaths are individuals who have no empathy. They have no ability to be punished by external forces, right? So jail time usually doesn't bother them. Broken relationships usually doesn't bother them, right? Other things like rejection, right? They're not easy to be punished because they don't have empathy, so they can't put themselves in your shoes. Neither can they envision how you're going to react or how you're going to feel, right? They also don't fear change. They also don't fear loss. That's just not something that they focus their attention on. They're not relational beings. So if we think of it in terms of that way, right, or in that sense, then they're going to see your forgiveness of them as weakness. They're going to see your forgiveness of them as a pass to do it again, right? And that's the psychopath, that's the sociopath, that's the narcissist, the manipulator, right? They're going to see your forgiveness of them as weakness. Now, in that video, I think I made it very clear that forgiveness is not 100% for the person that you're forgiving, but it's for you. And so if you choose to forgive, wonderful, because now you're reducing the pressure and the stress in your life. You're also reducing the energy, the negative energy that it takes to not forgive and to hold a grudge. So it really is about you, but how will the other person perceive it? Again, depends on, the person and how accountable they are. Okay, I hope I got that question for you, Bree. If so, that was a great question. Okay, the next is Isabelle Shelley. This was interesting. She said, I had a psychopathic father, made me eat my pets and sexually abuse my siblings and I. This is something that really does turn into sadistic acts. Okay, so this is something that turns into a lot greater of an issue than just a psychopath. So, you know, it sounds to me as if he was a psychopath, but he also had some sadistic traits that really made him kind of violent. Because any time that you can kill animals and cook them or make your family eat them or whatever, you know, we're talking about, you know, something that's kind of up there with cannibalism. And Jeffrey Dahmer was one who engaged in such acts, and he was very sadistic. He murdered and then he cut up their bodies and stuffed it in the freezer because he didn't want to be alone. He was very sick, very sadistic, very criminally minded, right? He didn't see any human life as worthwhile. Neither did he see pets as worthwhile. And as a matter of fact, his history involved, killing pets and harming animals or things that he would see in his backyard. So, you know, sometimes with psychopaths, you know, you have to keep in mind that they graduate levels, right? So they may have some trauma, then they may have some narcissistic tendencies, then they may become a sociopath, meaning that they know how to push the right buttons to get what they want in society, right? They know how to look, they know how to sound, they know how to act, right? And then they may graduate to a psychopath, which is more of an isolated kind of creature or being who can become criminally minded if the opportunity presents itself. They have the ability to transform in ways that a sociopath, a narcissist, and somebody with a trauma history could not. So when you get up to that level, you graduate to that level of killing pets, the next of kin is most likely going to be a human being, or you've thought about it. So, you know, when you start getting into cannibalism and eating animals and stuff like that, then that's when you know the person's really, really sick. And Jeffrey Dahmer is one that I really think was on that level, just very sick-minded and criminally minded and just bordering insane, intelligent, but bordering insane. Okay, so Isabelle, thank you for that. That's tough, and I'm really sorry that you had to deal with that. That's really tough. All right, the next one is Morgan. So she's talking about a psychopathic mother, and I'll put that video up here that I did a while ago. And I talked about a psychopathic mother and how she is and how she looks. And if any of you are familiar with the movie Mommy Dearest, you'll know what I'm talking about. Mommy Dearest was, you know, not only fixated on success and attention and beauty and charm, but she was also fixated on keeping her daughter, who I believe was adopted if I'm remembering the movie correctly. She was really fixated on keeping her daughter beneath her, condescending and just kind of lost and confused and in the dark. She wasn't giving of herself to her daughter at all. And there had been some updated versions of the story Mommy Dearest that occurred after the actual movie, and it showed you know, the daughter being an adult and still struggling with this mother who was really crazed and insane, but came across to society as very normal and quite attractive. So I talked about that. And so Morgan is a subscriber who said, you know, she asked her mother after an abusive relationship with a guy, she says, you know, her mother said that she couldn't live with her because it would disrupt her daily routine. What I see in that is not only a psychopathic mother, but a mother who doesn't have any intention of changing, being accountable, and being a mother. She has no intention of trying to improve herself and to be better. All she sees is herself. And so you, Morgan, are interfering with the way that she's kind of designed her life to go. Interestingly, sociopaths, narcissists, psychopaths, you know, they want their life to go a certain way. And if it doesn't go the way that they want, they pretty much snap, right? Because the world revolves around them and them only. So, you know, to ask if you could come into her world is really like it's a threat. And so I'm sure she saw it as more of a threat than anything, you know, from her eyes. And that's the issue with a psychopathic father, psychopathic mother, psychopathic spouse, psychopathic friend, coworker, boss. You never know what's going to trigger them. You never know what's going to get them to a place of vulnerability where they start to crack. And sometimes if you disrupt what they're used to or you disrupt their routine, they really do snap because they don't like that. Remember, they don't have any empathy. They have no concern of you. The world is just them and them only. So it's a sad reality. All right, the next one is Patricia. And thank you so much, Patricia, for this comment. I love how you encourage the other subscribers on the channel when you can. And I can't remember what this is about. But I will try to put the name somewhere around me so that you'll know which video it is so you can tune in and so forth. But Patricia says, restrict your time and interactions with toxic people for the sake of your mental health. Restrict your time and interactions with toxic people for the sake of your mental health. And I agree 100%. I couldn't agree any more than that, anymore. I think that it's important to draw the line. It's important to say, okay, this is where I'm going to put up the boundary because I can't do it. And I had to get to a place in my adult life, once I came through my 20s, now in my 30s, I had to get to a place where I realized that, bringing this kind of stuff into my realm, this toxicity is really pushing me over the edge. And I had gotten to a point of extreme burnout to where I was just a nervous wreck. And it took some time for me to pick myself back up. But I was letting in the wrong people into my world. They weren't bad people. They were just toxic. They had bad attitudes and bad life visions and jealousy and envy and anger and, a lot of stuff. And it just crowded up my vision. And so, Patricia, what I like about your comment is you're really reinforcing the important thing that we need to do, which is draw the line in the sand and say, okay, this is where you stop, and this is where I'm going to begin putting up boundaries. So thank you for that. That's 100% something that I agree with. So thank you. The next is BC Tutor, and I believe that this is a new subscriber. They say, could you do a video on parents who isolate their children? And so I want to talk just briefly about what that looks like, because there are some parents who are psychopaths who do isolate their children, and they do it because, number one, they don't want to be found out by society. Number two, you become a threat to them because now you are self-aware and you're aware of their tactics and you're aware that their tactics are crazy, for lack of a better word. You are becoming aware of the fact that their behaviors are sick or sadistic or psychotic even. And so, you're kind of getting ahead of them. So they try to isolate you and keep you in a small realm so that they can control you and manipulate you and really zone in on your weaknesses and dominate you. Some psychopaths like doing that, isolating you and zoning in on your weaknesses, just for the simple fact that it feels good to be in control over something weaker. That's how you know the person's a psychopath. They can do it without any guilt. And we're not talking about somebody who just had a bad day and got upset and they're controlling and manipulative. We're talking about somebody who kind of does this for a living. They just attempt to manipulate and zone in on your weaknesses because it feels good. That is a problem. So let me just start out with the first thing that parents do when they're trying to isolate their children. They do what's called parental alienation, and that's when you alienate the child from the other parent and you talk against the other parent and you try to change the mindset and you skew the vision and the perception of the child in relation to the other parent. Your intention is to get that child to dislike the other parent. And it may be unintentional, right? There may be some things that you're saying or doing that kind of sends those messages to the child that you're alienating them from their other parent. So it can be intentional or unintentional, but nevertheless, it's parental alienation because they're not able to have their own view of that parent. You're feeding them your own view. Okay, so that's one way that a lot of parents try to alienate their children and isolate them. Another one is cult-like thinking. So running the household in a way that feels like a cult, running, the family system in a way where every person in the household has to do the same things, really being strict, really being routine and obsessive, locking things up or keeping kids locked in rooms and locked away, really running the house like a concentration camp. That's another way that sick, unstable, immature parents try to isolate their children. They create a cult-like environment to keep the children submissive. It works. And that goes into my next one, which is a religious mindset. There are sometimes, situations where the parent will use religion to control and to dominate and to put fear in the child. And that religion becomes like a cult, because the religion is what drives the child's feelings of guilt and shame. And it drives their emotional reactions. It also drives their decisions, and it drives how they see themselves. It drives their self-esteem, their self-worth. And so religion in that sense becomes an evil weapon. It's not something that's going to help build you up, encourage you, and then cause you to flourish, right? That sounds weird. I probably mispronounced that. But that's another thing that some parents will use to isolate their children, which is the religious cult-like mindset. It works because what are kids going to say, right? They know they have to go to church. They know they have to follow the rules of the home. So how do they differentiate cult-like, religious-like a mentality in a household from just these are my parents and this is what I have to do? So, that can become a major tool for a psychopath, and it has become a tool. And, there's another one too, and I call it the boss syndrome in the household. And what I mean by that is every parent follows the other parent to run the household, right? There's no ultimate authority. There's no ultimate guide. It's both parents, and one tends to be the weaker vessel and the other one dominates. And then the children have to follow that dominant parent, right? Because they're either intimidated or afraid, or, there's this religious cult-like household. So they know they have to follow the rules or deal with the consequences. So, all of those things are used to isolate children. And unfortunately, it works. It's mind control. It's group think. And I've talked about this on this channel a couple of times. I will be talking about this more in the new year, and how to break free and become more independent. I think that's something that we can talk about in the new year. Parents who want to isolate, they use this. And there's one more comment that I want to point out. And it is Victoria Papiche, I think that's how you say it. I'm going to put her comment right over here. She says, many are posting how they miss their loved ones around this time of year, or how they miss their loved ones. It was a holiday video that I had done a couple weeks ago before Thanksgiving. And she said, many are posting on her Facebook page just how much they miss their loved one around this time of year. And I've had a lot of clients come in recently that's talking about the loss of their loved ones, the separation of their loved ones, the complicatedness of the family systems, and so forth. So I would encourage you that, if you're dealing with loss, if you're dealing with grief, if you're dealing with a separated family, I want to encourage you that it's not going to be this way forever. I think there's a better ending. There's a better future. I think if you stay out of the commercialism of the holiday and you focus on a small piece of it, you focus on what you're grateful for, you focus on God, you focus on your faith, you focus on the people that you love, you focus on the things that you currently have, you focus on your goals, right? You focus on your future dreams and hopes. If you take your view from the now to the future, right, and you become more mindful about who's in your environment and what you're entertaining in your mind and in your heart, I think you can get through this holiday a lot easier. It's only when you start to stray, right? You start looking in somebody else's car, or you start looking in somebody else's lane, wondering why you didn't do something or why you're where you're at. The other issue is, looking so far ahead that you begin to cause yourself anxiety in the now, because all you know is that you want to get from here to there. That can cause anxiety. So if you keep yourself from doing those things, including entertaining feelings of guilt and thoughts of shame, I think you can get through the holiday untouched. It's only when you do those things that you begin to fail, that you begin to sink, that you begin to panic and feel depressed. So I'm going to be coming back next week. We're going to talk about some other things, but then we're also going to talk about Christmas coming up and New Year, the new year, because I'm going to be taking a 2 weeks vacation away from YouTube, away from my practice. So I want to give you guys a little bit of information and some things to think about as we move into the next year. Thank you so much for being with me today, guys, in this video. I encourage you to give it a thumbs up if it was helpful to you, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you would like to stick around around with us. All right, have a wonderful weekend. Take care of yourself. I'm going to do the same, and I'll see you on Monday. Bye.